HRN listeners. As we celebrate our 15th year, we are deepening our commitment to giving voice to the next generation of food systems storytellers, and we need your help. Our internship and fellowship programs help activate new possibilities for underrepresented and underestimated young people through experiential journalism, audio engineering, and production training. Through these unique programs, HRN helps food equity stewards build essential workforce readiness skills that expand their potential and foster economic mobility. Please consider supporting these critical programs. And with a minimum donation, you can be entered to win a dinner for two at an amazing restaurant in one of 8 cities and tickets to a concert at a great venue in one of those cities. We have incredible partners across the country who have donated, as they also share our passion for helping to educate the next generation of food systems storytellers. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. And make sure you donate before March 31st. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by 100 Bogart Street, a co-working building in Bushwick, Brooklyn. Need a professional place to work from? Learn more by visiting 100bogart.com. Hey, this is Hannah, HRN's program manager. It's HRN's 10th anniversary and now our summer fund drive. So show your support for independent, revolutionary, entertaining food radio by becoming a monthly recurring donor. HRN is powered by a passionate community of thoughtful eaters, and we need each and every one of you to show your support so that we can keep bringing you your favorite food podcasts. It takes a village, and every dollar donated, every listener tuning in is essential to our continued success. So set up a donation for $10 every month. You'll show us that you want to be a part of a bright future for HRN. And you'll get one of our brand new limited edition Pizza Pocket t-shirts. So snag your new favorite tea and show us some love, all for the price of about 2 fancy lattes each month. Go to heritageradionetwork.org/donate today. And thank you.
Welcome to the Grape Nation, your weekly wine journey. Our guest is Rita Jammet. We'll talk to Rita about food, wine, bubbles, hospitality, women in wine, and more. We'll taste some La Caravelle that Rita was so gracious to bring in for our weekly wine sip. I'm your host, Sam Ben-Ruby. Stay with us for the Grape Nation on the Heritage Radio Network. We bring wine to the people. Born in Saudi Arabia to an Iraqi family, Rita Jammet grew up in Lebanon and Switzerland. She received a degree in economics from the University of Geneva, working with her dad upon graduation. She met her French husband, Andre, with deep ties to hospitality and wine, exposing Rita to a life of restaurants, wine, and champagne. Rita is the co-owner and chief bubble officer of La Caravelle Champagne, and we're going to give you a lot of background on that. Welcome to the Grape Nation, Rita.
Thank you. Great to be here, Sam.
I've been thinking about having you on for a while for a lot of different reasons. Champagne, hospitality, women in wine. So
awesome.
We're finally here. Rita, give our listeners a little context about who you are. And I think a good time to start, I mentioned you had met your husband. Mm-hmm. You have a very colorful background. Saudi Arabia,
a lot
Iraq,
of steps.
Lebanon.
A lot of steps.
And then you meet a Frenchman who is steeped in hospitality. So take me from there to the current.
Okay. I should say that I've always studied the French school, so I was French educated. French is my main language, so there is already a little conduit to Andre. When I was living in Switzerland, one of my friends had said to me one day, you should meet my uncle. And I'm thinking, uncle, that sounds a little, older.
Old guy.
Older. And in fact, given the fact that Andre's the 10th of 10 children,
That's why.
his niece, who was daughter of the sister number 2, was practically my age. So Andre's just 7 years older than me, so it's perfect.
So what year was this?
This was in 1977.
Okay.
76, rather. Yeah.
And things happened quickly with you and
Things
Andre?
happened rather quickly,
Okay.
yes. And it was a bit of a long-term relationship, a long distance rather,
Right.
because I lived in Geneva, he lived in Paris. So we'd meet either in Geneva or in Paris or in Burgundy, which was our middle ground.
Good fun middle place.
Yes.
So what happens where you decide, because I know you left Geneva, you just decided it was enough, I have to be with Andre?
When we got married, a little before getting married, I moved to Paris.
Okay.
And then we got married in Geneva. Then obviously we settled in Paris. Only a few months after we settled in Paris, the family sold the Bristol Hotel.
So go backwards and tell people Andre's
Okay.
family background, because that's impressive.
It is quite a beautiful story.
Yeah.
So Andre's father, Hippolyte, founded the Bristol Hotel in 1925. And
Considered one of the great hotels
absolutely,
of the world, right?
biggest palaces in the
Sure.
world, yes. And with his wife, Yvonne, they had 10 children. No twins, I should say.
Okay.
And Andre being the 10th of these 10 children, the youngest of these 10 children. So Andre was actually literally born in a room at the Bristol Hotel, room 732.
It's great.
And he grew up in the hotel, and then they lived, after that, they lived a little outside of Paris, but that was beyond his world. He was like in this beautiful bubble.
Right.
And so when they sold the hotel, it was very hard for Andre because...
How old was he?
Andre was about 35,
Okay.
38, yeah.
Was he working there and everything?
He was working there. He was
Full,
working there, and
doing
actually,
everything.
another interesting thing is during his tenure at the Bristol, he lived in New York for 2 or 3 years as a representative of the Bristol here, because they had a lot of
Right.
customers, clients from the U.S.
So the closing of the hotel is the event that creates you guys to move.
It's not a closing; it's a sale.
Sale.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
They
glad
sold
you
it to
cleared that.
actually a wonderful group, a German group, the Oetker Group.
Okay.
Who then went on to do some beautiful renovations and kept really the spirit of my father-in-law. To this day, when we go
Nice
to
to
Paris,
see
we
that.
stay there and they welcome us. They say, "This is your home," which is really very touching.
Yeah, a place like
It's
that.
good karma,
You
yeah.
want to keep the legacy and the history.
Absolutely.
All right, so you come to New York.
We come to New York.
Was New York the obvious choice? Or not necessarily?
We had come to New York because during our honeymoon, and it's so interesting because I like to listen to my gut, what my gut says to me. And when we landed, it was my first time in the U.S. We land here and we're on our way from JFK to Manhattan. Not the most glamorous ride
No.
ever.
Better than Newark, but not good at all.
True. So I said to Andre, I want to live here. And he's thinking, oh gosh, what is this?
Right.
And I said, this is it. I know, I just love this country. And so that's my love story with America started then. And
So what are the first things, because we'll get to La Caravelle,
Mm-hmm.
what are the first things you're both doing when you get here?
when we get here, we had been promised by quote unquote friends a project where Andre could work and invest, and another situation where we would get sponsored for the green card. And we get here with our little luggage for 2 months because we packed everything in France in a warehouse, and we realized after a few days that it ain't happening on both fronts.
Oh, boy.
So we're here. What do we do? What do we do? So we immediately turn to each other. We're not going back. We're here. We're going to make it work. Who do you know? Who do I know? With his long history of hotels, he interned in some of the most beautiful palaces in the world in different cities. So he had connections in that world. And he just called, and the Tisch family and the GM of the Regency Hotel here.
They're still
says,
there?
Andre, well, great, come here, you'll work, and then we'll sponsor you for the green card. And that's how it started. So we're always very
Wow. That's a
grateful
great story.
to the Tisch family.
So bring it up to when because because there's probably a lot in between. But let's get to La Caravelle.
La Caravelle.
La Caravelle was an institution in New York. It
Yes.
pre-existed you guys coming in.
It did.
But you tell me how you got to it, what year, and we'll talk about that a little.
Yes. So La Caravelle was founded in 1960 by Robert Mézin and Fred Decré. So after Andre got his green card, he started to look for a restaurant to do something, either open a restaurant or just see how he could fit into that world, because it was kind of the conduit after hotel, the hospitality. So he had as his quote-unquote advisor Robert Mézin on a friendly basis. He'll present projects to him, and interestingly enough, Robert always says, "Nah, not this one. Nah, not that one." Then one day he says to Andre, "Why don't you come for lunch with me at La Caravelle?" So they have lunch, and then Robert says, "I'm thinking of retiring. Would you want to buy my shares, my half of La Caravelle?" So Andre says, "Sure, that would be great." So that's how it started in 1984.
So right after that lunch, everything went into motion?
Right after that lunch.
You moved into, working at La Caravelle?
That's right.
So that's Andre. What do you do?
So in the meantime,
are you on the ground at the restaurant? Do you join him or not right away?
Before that, I should say that since, when you apply for the green card, you can't really travel outside of the country. Or you can travel, but you can't come back in.
Right.
So Andre was kind of stuck here. And in the meantime, I was offered a job at the French embassy here. They had the cultural services here.
Makes sense.
So then I got a diplomatic visa, so at least one of us could
You
go
can go
visit the
back.
family, right? So that's what I did. And then after the green card arrived, we started having babies.
Right.
And I would call La Caravelle a baby too.
Right.
So 3 sons during this process.
So you were juggling a lot.
We were juggling a lot. So at first I didn't work at the restaurant, but
Right.
then shortly thereafter, 4 years later, Andre bought his partner, who was then Roger Fessaguet, was the chef at the
What
opening.
year was that? Early 90s?
This was in 88.
That was
Yes.
in 88. You got there 84, he bought in 88?
Exactly. He
Okay.
bought the second half in
Right.
88. So then I started to
Right.
work, yes, at
It
the
was
restaurant.
all yours. Let's talk about La Caravelle a little, because even to this day, there was a handful of the best, finest, revered French restaurants, and La Caravelle was always one of them.
Yeah.
Tell me a little about it. What made it different? I know you had some famous clientele, the murals.
did.
I mean, it was. When you look back, people yearn for that.
They do, and actually, there's another interesting historical tidbit: is that Andre's father's his godfather, so his father's
Right.
godfather, was instrumental in bringing the restaurant, the Drouin, to operate the pavilion. Remember the French, the World Exhibition?
Yes.
The French pavilion was manned by Drouin Restaurant in Paris, and it turned into Le Pavillon. Which then was the genesis of all the major French restaurants of that era.
Right. I remember
La
that.
Côte Basque,
Sure.
Le Cygne,
Who was the famous person at...
Henri Soulet.
Right.
Henri
Soule?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
He was sort of the patriarch
Exactly.
of the whole movement in a way.
Totally. The 2 founders of La Caravelle worked at Le Pavillon. And one day they decided to open their own place. And Ambassador Kennedy heard that, and he said, "If you open, we'll be there from day one," which is what happened in September 1960.
So this is John Kennedy's dad, Joe
Yes,
Kennedy.
exactly.
The real
Ambassador.
patriarch of that family.
Totally.
Who was an ambassador.
Right. So picture this as a timing.
Okay.
They opened in September 1960, and thinking it's going to be like a little bistro. They didn't set out to do a fine dining establishment. And then in day one, the Kennedy family dines there all the time. That's their new dining room. And in November, John is elected to be president of the United States. Guess what the dad does?
That's
to
the
rest?
craziest thing that could happen.
Totally crazy. So they're catapulted to like that heights.
Right.
And when the White House needed a chef, they would turn to the owners of La Caravelle and
You
identify
actually
someone.
recommended a chef for them.
It was Robert Mézin and Fred Decré, yes. René Verdon, who stayed at the White
Now,
House.
did
for many years.
JFK come in at times?
Yes, yes.
And did
And
Jackie
a lot.
continued
She
probably
did.
as in she was
Till her very
became a
last
famous
days.
New Yorker.
Exactly, to her
Sure,
very
that
last
was a
days.
good lunch spot for her. And the other thing is 2 interesting things. some pretty damn good chefs came out of there.
Yes.
And not necessarily your traditional French chefs.
Nope.
You change with the times,
We
and
did.
the chefs reflected that.
It was
Talk
a
about a few of
gutsy
the
move.
people. Yeah.
It was a gutsy move at the time because a French restaurant always had a French chef. And we had met Michael Romano while he was staging in Switzerland. And through a common friend of ours, Professor Ahrens at the City Tech, he said, you should meet this young man. He wants to come back to the U.S. and do something. So we actually explored opening a restaurant with Michael Romano, and before the Caravelle situation happened. And then things didn't really find a project that was viable, so they said, okay, we each go our own way, and keep in touch. So when André joined La Caravelle, the then chef, André Moisan, said, I need to go work at a club. I don't want to work evenings anymore. I want to have my weekends and all that. So they need a chef. So Andre says, wait, this young man.
Michael.
He was, yeah, exactly. Michael Romano, with a European sensibility, et cetera, et cetera. So they hired Michael Romano, and that was like a big, big shock. The French dowager, as they call the restaurant, is hiring a non-French chef and an American one.
Right.
So that was amazing.
And Michael was there how long?
Michael was there for a few years, and actually he had the toughest job of all the chefs because when Michael arrived, the menu was huge. It was Escoffier time,
Right.
previous century. And he, little by little, brought it to plating, in the kitchen and more lighter ingredients, less preparations, etc. So it was a very special time to have Michael with
And
us.
Michael, you helped launch a career where Michael went on to become,
Yep.
one of the great chefs in New York,
Absolutely.
Union Square,
Yep.
Cafe.
Yep. Absolutely.
And a few other places. But you also brought in another interesting
The
chef.
Japanese
If
chef.
if you think
Yes.
bringing an American is, how about this move? Tell us about that.
Exactly. So after, I would say 2 chefs later, because all these years, we have circumstances happen and you change chefs. And we had one of the chefs had left abruptly, and we needed a chef. So Tadashi Ono was working as a saucier. He was making sauces there. And we said, instead of looking outside, let's just look who we have here. And we saw Tadashi very hardworking, very focused, and very good mentality also. So we said to him, hey, Tadashi, would you like to try for the summer? If it works for you, for the restaurant, more importantly for our guests, then we can make a go of it. And that's what happened.
And
then he became the chef, which was another shock.
how long was he the chef?
He was the chef for a good 8 years.
And that's a long time.
That's a long time.
Any
And
tenure for any place. And I'm sure he changed the menu
he
a
did
bit too.
He did, because we had a very interesting structure of menu at La Caravelle. We had the classics, which we didn't want to touch.
Right.
The handful of dishes that will remain on the menu, no matter who the chef is.
Right.
And then the other part is chef's inspiration, so that for a chef
You wouldn't alienate your old
Exactly,
clientele, and
exactly.
you were able to
Yeah.
stay with the
It
times.
was a tricky thing to do so that your image doesn't appear, bipolar or kind of.
Was
like,
Tadashi
clear.
the last chef there, or
No. Tadashi left. After that, we had. I'm forgetting. I'm sorry.
all right? Don't worry.
And then we had Cyril Renaud, which was
Right.
another very interesting.
Tell me a little
episode.
about Cyril.
So Cyril was working for David Boulet.
Right.
And he had actually never been an executive chef. So he was a sous chef. And then we offered him, the position, which was another gutsy move because he was 29 years old. If you can imagine.
And a kitchen's a crazy place, so anything
It
could
is.
happen. Yeah.
It is. But Cyril brought with him this amazing burst of creativity. Like you'd go to him at the beginning of the meal and you'd say, Chef, what's today? What are you cooking? I don't know yet. As he was
Wow.
composing the dish.
Wow.
Well, the
Very
dining room people were
creative
like,
and spontaneous. Right.
How do we mark the table? We don't know. But it was very interesting.
That drives people crazy. So you close in 2004.
Yes.
A sad occasion, and there's a few reasons
Yes.
why nobody was doing it better than you guys. I mean,
Right.
you are, I'm making this word up, a hospitalian. I mean, hospitality
Totally.
is, your wheelhouse, the food, the creativeness, staying with the times.
But at some point, you have to close the doors, and there's a couple reasons why.
Well, before we get into that, I just want to let you know that May 22nd was the actual date that we closed the restaurant in 2004. Yes.
Wait, today?
Today.
Wow.
It's the 15th anniversary of the closing of La Caravelle.
That's appropriate. To get
it
to
is.
talk about it.
I like how
Yeah, that's good karma.
Yeah, it is.
Only good thoughts.
Well, we had problems, big problems after 9/11.
The effect was amazing.
The effect was amazing, and we tried to hang on for another 2-3 years, but it was really, really hard.
What was the effect? People were not going out. They weren't spending money.
Exactly.
I mean, were those the two primary
the
things?
notion of luxury and high-end dining had changed. People didn't want formality anymore. You can have fine dining, but more. At the very first stage, it was all comfort food because people needed to be comforted.
Is it fair to say that forced the birth of the real casual dining?
I would say it got a big boost, yes.
Now
With
it's big,
some elements
because
of fine
millennials
dining.
have a big, your audience was not, your clients were not millennials.
No.
They were baby boomers and post-war people
Right.
and all of that.
Right.
So 9/11 and what else?
9/11, the rents. I mean, also the high cost of rents. We had high employee costs, and then I think at some point there was a brief, very sad episode, the anti-French movement.
Yeah.
You remember French
Yes.
fries, Liberty fries, and all
Yeah.
that. All this put together.
That was Congress and all of that. They wouldn't serve it in,
No.
the congressional.
But then, NYC and Company did a great effort with the Restaurant Week and special promotions to bring people back into restaurants because a lot of restaurants were suffering.
Yeah.
A lot.
I mean, downtown even more because of the
Oh my God,
proximity
yes.
physically to
Yes.
all that was going on.
It was tragic for a lot of people. But in our particular case, I would say the biggest element was that the fine dining that we were part of, that brand of fine dining was no longer appealing to enough
Yeah.
people, the formality of it. And on our end, if we had to change those parts of our DNA, we wouldn't be who we were supposed to be. So it
Right.
would be too confusing.
You wouldn't be what you set out to. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So we decided it's better to exit with a big, in a big door, in a nice way, in a nice official way. And we were actually nominated for Outstanding Restaurant at James Beard.
The last year?
The last year.
Damn if you do, damn if you
Yeah,
don't.
we were supposed to announce the closing in March, and then we get a call that same night. The night before announcing, we get a call from the James Beard Foundation saying, you've been nominated for Outstanding Restaurant. At first, I thought it was a joke. Then I said, okay, what do we do? We're supposed to announce we're closing. They said, no, whatever you do, hold on till May. So we did. And
Wow.
we didn't win,
Now the
but
James
we were
Beard
nominated.
Award is,
oh
it's
my
like
gosh.
the Oscars. I'm
Totally.
sure you've been to them. They were recently
I go
in
every
Chicago.
year, yes.
All right. Tell me one last thing about Le Caravelle. We are a wine show, and we're going to talk a lot about wine and champagne. But in those times, wine, sommeliers, the program were way different than now.
Way different.
How important was the wine and wine program then compared to now? How big was the selection? And, now you walk into a restaurant, there's 6 sommeliers.
Yes.
Probably in those days there were 6 in New York.
Right, that's true.
So
we actually had, we were one of the first restaurants.
And you were wine guys, so you knew.
We were actually, originally I wasn't a wine person.
But
I became.
Andre had some great exposure to
Absolutely,
wine.
he's very knowledgeable
Yeah.
about wine, and he's the Chevalier du Tastevin from Burgundy. But he is the first one who, as a French restaurant, featured non-French wines, starting with American wines. He's like, yeah, we live in this country. There are amazing wines in here. And then Italian, and then, from other countries in the world. And that was very gutsy.
So
of him,
were they
but
embraced? There wasn't much pushback?
Well, we had to do a little, presentation.
Well, you had
and
French
support.
wines for your people that wanted
Exactly.
it, but
we had both options, all options. So
you
that
could
was good.
say you were one of the earlier restaurants to really open up the list.
Absolutely, because traditionally French restaurants had only French wines, Italian restaurants had only Italian wines, et cetera, et cetera. So we wanted to be global, and we're in New York. First of all, we're in America.
Of course.
Yeah.
They want California. They know Italian.
That's right.
You know the restaurant business. Do you think the wine, as far as the business, was as important then as now, or it was more secondary? The food was
I would
star.
say the food was the primary thing. However, there were not as many wines available as there are now.
So now
that's
it
also
could
a big
be,
factor.
it showcases better because
It
of
did.
all the options and more of the sommeliers.
Definitely.
So it changed. But you made the move with introducing.
We did, and we did have we had sommeliers at La Caravelle. Toward the end, one of them was a young lady who's now in the South.
Oh, yeah?
So we still keep in touch in Alabama.
Nice.
Yes.
Nice. Le Caravelle went on to but it launched Le Caravelle Champagne, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But in June, June is Women in Wine Month, and we like to recognize, women in wine. We think they're underserved.
That's
and,
amazing.
They're doing great things and sometimes don't get the recognition. You've been around. As a woman in the business, did you encounter any challenges as a woman, being a woman? I mean, were you pushed to the side? Did you accept? I mean, how do you answer that?
I would say in my particular case, I didn't feel much of that.
Okay.
Because I was an owner both of the restaurant and of the champagne brand.
Right.
So honestly speaking, I cannot say that I was, that I felt any discriminations or less of interest or things like that.
So I think part of that is who you are and your personality, what you exude. Nobody's going to screw around. And I think, owning the place and all of that. You see or sense anything around you, or it was hard to even pick up on that?
It was hard to pick up on that, but when we had Susan, who was our somm at La Caravelle, we would give her a lot of, I would say, prerogative so that she didn't have to face those things. And the guests were always asking the male captain, hey, how about the wine? And he said, well, here's our sommelier. Wait, she's the sommelier?
She would
this
go to
young
a
lady?
table and they would
Yes.
say, send the somm
People
over.
were very surprised to see her.
So
a young, beautiful woman, and knowledgeable and all that, but they didn't see that at the beginning.
Yeah.
But it took a little bit
So
of...
there was some of that, not
There
so
was.
much with you. Do you think things have changed? I mean, for the better?
I hope so. I think so. That's not to say there aren't any cases out there.
There are more women sommeliers. We know that, right?
Definitely. And not to be, it's a fact that's been scientifically recognized that women have a little better palate. Some women have a more acute
No
palate.
argument.
Okay, right.
No
so-
argument. That's why,
I didn't want to be too pushy
No.
on that, but-
No. I agree with you. That's why, when you walk into a restaurant and there are somms and there are women, guys, whatever, everyone is, perfectly
Absolutely, yeah.
capable and all of that. Tell me a little about something that you're involved in. What is it, Les Dames d'Escoffier?
Les Dames d'Escoffier.
Which plays into this,
Yes.
subject, women in wine.
Exactly.
You're involved for years. What is it?
It's an association of women who are in the hospitality business, and obviously it includes women in wine. The original chapter, interestingly enough, was in New York.
It was?
And we just opened a chapter in Paris, like this year. It's crazy, but it's a...
So why wasn't it called the New York Wine Women?
I don't know. The
Fancy schmancy name? Right?
Well, so we had wonderful founders, Carol Brock, who's still
Right.
around, and Julia Child was also a grande dame.
Right.
She was one of our, early.
And the goal and motive is to really mentor and elevate
women
women
and support
in the-
each other, network. Also, we raise money for scholarships for young women who want to study in the industry. We mentor them, and we help them as much as we can. We interact with each other, network, support each other, educate each other.
And I would guess today, interest in being a member is more popular than ever.
Absolutely,
right? It's a
absolutely.
big thing now. That's a good organization, and it's nice that you've been involved. All right, Rita, we're going to take a quick break. We're talking to Rita Jammet. Rita Jammet is the Chief Bubble Officer, which is maybe one of the great C titles in the business of La Caravelle Champagne, which we're going to talk about. You're listening to The Grape Nation. We'll be right back.
This episode was brought to you by 100 Bogart, a new building in Bushwick, Brooklyn, with meeting and event spaces available for on-demand booking. Looking for the next perfect outdoor location for your next gathering? Host your next event at 100 Bogart's impressive rooftop, just steps away from the Morgan L stop. It's one of the largest and tallest roof spaces in Bushwick, boasting 360-degree views of Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens. 100 Bogart's rooftop is available for your next networking event, fundraiser, special performance, or photo shoot. There's approximately 5,000 square feet, ample space for up to 100 guests. For more information on hosting an event at 100 Bogart's rooftop, email info@100bogart.com or call 718-362-3539.
All right, we're back. We're back with my guest, Rita Jammet. Rita, let's talk about champagne in general. We'll get to La Caravelle,
Sure.
all right? You're a champagne expert. Tell me in your words why champagne is like no other wine. And you know what I think we should do while you're talking? Give me that little bottle and let's crack it.
Absolutely. Here we go.
Don't worry.
So Sam's about to open our cuvée Nina. So champagne for me, first of all, it's a magical drink. I am totally biased, and people who are not biased
I don't know
agree
if you're
with
so
me.
biased.
Good.
Well, tell me why you think you're biased.
Because it's my life.
Okay.
Champagne is my life. I think that champagne is, first of all, when you learn about champagne, what it takes to have that beautiful nectar in the bottles
Right.
is so much work and expertise and specific climate and terroir and
That's the noise.
there we go.
People forget that it's wine.
It is wine that's fermented twice, but it's
Right.
wine. So yeah, if champagne, it has a happy connotation, but it should just be, enjoyed as wine, not necessarily only for celebrations.
Well, that's sort of the problem. It's been known as a celebratory drink.
Yes.
But for the things that you said, because it's a wine and it's so well crafted, it has acidity, the bubbles. It's so great with food.
It's very food friendly. Very, very
Why?
food friendly. Because let's say you have two ways to match wine with pear wine. It's either by harmony or by contrast. And champagne does both.
Explain that. So in harmony or contrast?
Harmony.
So harmony would be complementing?
Harmony would be, yes, the same level of acidity, strength, sweetness. Let's say you're having, as traditionally pairing, was the shellfish. Because our elders lived in Champagne and they didn't taste anything else. Then they had the white meats only at the max, and that's
Oysters,
it. Exactly.
shrimp.
I mean, Champagne with oysters, with sashimi, with raw fish, with cooked
Those
fish.
are the classic pairings.
Exactly. And on the other hand, with the advent of global cuisine and kind of being exposed to different flavors, textures from all over the world, even in New York, which is like a melting pot by itself. Let's say you try a champagne with a hamburger. It's amazing. And now it'll be the contrast, because the acidity, the bubbles, and the chill temperature of the champagne will act as a counterpart to the fat in the meat and the cheese, or the richness of the bread. So it's
People
beautiful.
won't think that, but it has all the elements.
It
They'll
does.
think like a Zinfandel or a Cab or something.
Exactly, which would be heavy with it.
So I believe this, and I know you'll agree with me, and I think you just explained it away. It's probably the most versatile wine.
Hands down.
You don't worry about white or red, rosé.
Hands down, exactly.
You worry. I mean, it's great with popcorn, French fries, a burger.
A pizza,
Yeah, yeah,
potato chips. I mean, amazing.
yeah. And I think it's always been around, but it's having its time, and not a time that's going to come and go. I think it now has become part of the
Sure.
repertoire of wine lists.
It's opened so many possibilities. That's the beauty of it.
So what changes have you seen in Champagne? The product, how it's used. I mean, their grower champagne is a big thing. Wine lists now have more. Tell me some of the changes that you've noticed, that you've experienced in the business and as a consumer.
You've actually put the finger on. There's this new category. It's always existed, but now it's more at the forefront. The grower champagnes, it's a beautiful addition to the landscape.
Right.
Only some people tend to think that grower champagne is great and the big houses are not, which is totally wrong.
Well, Give me your definition or explanation of what grower champagne
Grower
is.
champagne is a grower who has his own vineyards and makes the champagne, elaborates the champagne himself or herself with the grapes from their own property, their own
Brands and
vineyards.
bottles it under their name.
Exactly.
Now, to your point, answer this question. Where did the big wineries get a lot of their...
It's a combination.
Wine.
You have combinations. You have big houses who actually own some vineyards, so they have.
But...
And they also buy,
Right.
the grapes from other producers.
Right.
So
some of the growers.
other growers.
Some
exactly.
of the growers
It's a
decide I've
combination.
been, contracting grapes to these guys. Let me
Exactly,
do
because there's not enough. It's a matter of quantity. There's not enough.
Are you, I know you're happy, but are you surprised the depth of some of the champagne lists in restaurants in New York? I mean, they go on for pages, Rita.
Yes. I think it's wonderful because
Yeah.
it shows the diversity of the champagne terroir and the winemaking, and there's so many different styles. As a consumer, what you want to do is to find the style that you like, that makes you happy. That's the first thing I learned about wine. I was hanging out for a weekend with Clive Coates for a charity event. I
Right.
said, I'm going to pick his brains. So I said, Clive, what makes this a good wine? And he said, I'll pass you I'll spare you the British accent, but if you're happy to go down your pocket for this much money and it's making you that happy, it's a good wine. So that was the most unintimidating and helpful thought, because what matters is you. It's an enjoyable thing, and you know your style. You drink what satisfies your style. That's it. That's all you need. And having
I
that
agree,
diversity,
and that's well put.
having that diversity in champagne and depth allows you to explore many different styles, and I think it's wonderful.
Do you feel there's still great value in champagne? Because we know there's some of the growers and producers, your dear friend Krug is not a cheap champagne. I mean, we're not at the point where we think champagne has outpriced itself as a beverage. And you're going to answer that because I think La Caravelle fits in that box. But take that out of the box for a second.
I think you have so many people don't realize how many inherent costs there are into producing a bottle of champagne, and especially if it's aged. That means it's your money is sleeping,
Sitting around.
years, exactly,
Yeah.
aging in those beautiful cellars. But that's immobilized money, so it tends to be more costly. I also think that the champagne making is a process that requires more steps, more people, more knowledge. And also, especially if you have a climate, challenges, you need to make that up into your champagne so that it keeps its style for the big houses.
Right.
So for me, as an insider, I think it's completely justified.
Yeah.
Because it's worth. And I think people need to learn a little more about what it takes. It takes a lot of steps and a lot of resources.
But that
to
being
produce a
said,
good
there's
champagne.
still some wonderful
There is
champagnes at
absolutely. Some
reasonable
houses
prices.
don't have big marketing costs, or just
Right.
like yours truly.
Right.
We don't. We're lucky that we can have a system. Granted, it's a niche brand. It's not a
Right.
widely.
Well, let's
spread.
talk about Le Caravelle now. So, give me a little history. You launched the brand in the restaurant
Yes.
because it made sense. Tell me the moment where you said,
there's
we got to
there's
throw a
another-
label on.
There's another little story with the genesis of that. Andre's father, his godmother, he was protected for godmother. His godmother was Madame Voltner, who was the then owner of La Mission Aubryon in Bordeaux.
Nice
So
little wine.
the winery produced a special barrel just for the Bristol. It was their
Really?
own proprietary, barrel. So Andre used to go with his dad to La Halle au Vin, the big hall, and take that, and then they would bottle it. It would be the Bristol special. So that kind of planted an idea in his brain, and we both love champagne, and so we thought, hey, how about we try to make, have a house make a champagne for us, and then that'll be ours just for our guests, not for outside purposes, just for our guests. So that's what happened, and in
What year was that?
98, beginning
So,
of 98.
great idea.
Great idea.
A little exposure, with the
Exactly.
Aubryon and the idea that you could
Yep.
do that. So what do you do? Who do you reach out? How do you get that done?
How do you get? Well, we had a very good friend at the time who was in the champagne business, and the house that produced his champagne, the winery, agreed to make a cuvée for us.
Who was that?
So
Can
that
you
was
say?
it was La Goutte d'Or, the
Okay.
winery La Goutte d'Or.
Okay.
So so we started with that, and then carried us all the way till the closing of the restaurant. We also, in the meantime, introduced we had a line of cognacs, which was beautiful.
Still?
No, it's finished.
Okay, but you have a Bordeaux
we
still?
We have a Bordeaux from
Listrac?
Listrac, exactly, made by a cooperative of Listrac, and a small production. Not every vintage is available because the winemaker only releases what he deems is the best.
So when the restaurant closed, was it obvious
So we thought
that
we had
you would carry the brand on?
not at all,
or
not at all.
Not right away.
Our thinking was we close the restaurant, everything stops.
Okay.
And then our friends and our guests and our family were like, "Hey, why don't you work with market the champagne?" And the Bordeaux, I was like, "That's a totally different situation. I'm in the restaurant business now. I'm going to be in the wine business. It's so different."
Was that scary to you?
It was super scary. The biggest scare for me was, in addition to all the technical steps to make it happen, was to be a salesperson. I do not
knew
like
you were
to
gonna
be-
say that.
I don't like to. I like to promote, which is very different from selling. And
The funny
the
thing is,
stuff-
though, I bet you still feel that, but you're so cut out as a people person in the way you connect. But it's still,
But
you
you
still
know,
get
my-
a little pit.
I do. My approach is, at the end of the day, if you don't really want the wine, I'm not going to go twist your arm or force my
Softer
way.
sell.
Softer. The product has to speak for itself.
Okay.
And of course, our friendship will open a door or help the connection, but the product itself has to be the one that makes you take that decision.
Well, I guess two things happened. A lot of great connections and contacts from the restaurant.
Yes. Yes.
And through the years, when you got started, I mean, I don't know if network is the word, but you're really out there. You really know people in the business. I mean, walking into a SOM, somebody you know,
Yes.
whether they buy it or not, it's one thing, but the connection
Exactly.
there,
Exactly.
you know,
well,
made
you know,
it a
the,
little easier.
the restaurant world and hospitality was my world.
Right.
And then when the Caravelle closed, I was like, I don't want to leave this world. It's too full of wonderful people, and it's my natural instinct to
But
be
you had
hospitable.
to sell, though.
I had to sell.
All right, so La Caravelle is a brand that started in the restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
and you currently, or you've had 3 different bottlings.
Yes.
Let's talk about each.
Sure.
You slot them in any order that you want.
Okay. So if you're going to go by intensity,
Do
flavor
that.
intensity, flavor,
Yep.
so we will start with the Blanc de Blanc. Is 100% Chardonnay, which comes from
That's
the
what
Côte
Blanc
de
de
Blanc.
Blanc means,
Exactly,
in case
because
any-
Chardonnay is the white grape,
Right.
and so Blanc is white, and it's actually a beautiful champagne because it's aged for 3 years, and so it's got wonderful notes of it's very fresh and it's got beautiful acidity, but not too sharp either.
Okay.
So that's the thing we always wanted to achieve is balance in the flavors.
Now, we'll talk about the 3, but is the production of one more than another?
I
Or-
would say the Blanc de Blanc is the one that is the least, just because it's
Oh,
a
it
little
is?
more,
Okay.
a little more, I'm not say esoteric, but less people are familiar
Okay.
with it. You know,
All right, so that's the Blanc de
Blanc de
Blanc,
Blanc. Then we
100% Chardonnay. So it's the La Caravelle Blanc de Blanc.
La Caravelle Blanc de Blanc
Okay.
champagne. Yes.
Then
Then,
we
we
move-
have the Cuvée Nina.
Okay.
Cuvée Nina is we call it the Brut, even though all 3 are in the Brut category. It's a blend of the 3 most, the largest grape in Champagne is Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier. So Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier are red grapes.
Right.
And they each bring an element to the blend, and that's why I always like to start tasting the Blanc de Blanc. Then we go to Cuvée Nina to see what the Pinot Noir and the Pinot Meunier, which will bring a little structure and a little bit of more fruit. And
Does the blending vary much? I mean, do you keep the blending similar for a style, or it depends on the vintage and what's
I would
available?
say yes and no. The base blend is the same. Granted, it might vary a couple of points depending on the year, the climate, if the ripeness.
not-
of the grapes.
not a-
no, not
okay.
not major. And you do want to maintain the same style unless you're doing it for 1 year. The vintage.
Right.
So then the Cuvée Nina is aged for 2 years. in the bottle.
How'd you come up with Cuvée Nina?
So Caravelle is the type of ship that Christopher Columbus sailed on when he discovered the New World.
Okay.
And his three Caravelle ships were named Nina, Pinta, Santa Maria.
Here's the Nina.
That's it.
Okay.
We thought it was fun instead of calling it
No, I like
tradition
that.
or
But
whatever.
it's more fun if people understand
Absolutely.
where it comes from.
It
So
does
that's why
take
I
an
asked you.
explanation, yeah.
All right, so that's the second wine,
Yeah.
and then the third one.
The third one is the rosé, which I like to call double magic because not just the bubbles and the
I think
happiness
when
about
people
it,
think of you and
the
La
color.
Caravelle, they think of the rosé too. Not to diss the other two,
Right,
but
yeah. So rosé is, you can make rosé champagne two methods. There are two methods. One is the blending type, which is what we have. They take the base blend of the Cuvée Nina and they blend in still Pinot Noir wine
right.
to make the rosé.
Okay.
And it's the only area in the world where you can do that, by the way.
Right.
And then there's the other method is the bleeding method, which is
Helps with color.
the color. When you leave the red grapes
Tell me
long
what
enough,
bleeding is.
the skin of the red grapes, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, they will seep. The color of the skin will seep into the wine.
So
if you
skin
leave it long
contact,
enough.
you leave
Exactly.
it in- okay.
Yeah, that's the other method of
Okay.
making. Yeah.
So that's the rosé.
Yes.
And then quickly you make a red Bordeaux from the region of Listrac.
Listrac and the Médoc.
Why? I mean, why did you decide?
It just so happened. It came our way. It's not something we were looking for, but it just so happened that one of our friends, who was one of the biggest wine buyers at the time, stumbled upon this cuvée and vineyard. It was actually called Caravelle.
Oh, really?
So we talked and we said, you know what, this is good. It's good. The price was super attractive as
Let's
well.
do it.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So it's a Merlot, predominantly Merlot based, which is a little rounder. Then it's got also Cabernet Sauvignon
Nice.
and a little Petit Verdot. Yeah.
Nice. So that's La Caravelle Listrac.
Listrac.
If people want to get more information, where's the best place for them to look? Is there a website?
There's our
Is there
website,
social media?
lacaravelle.com.
Okay.
Social media, I'm pretty, yeah.
Well, we'll get
as
to
you
that in a
know.
minute. Available retail, available in a lot of New York restaurants.
Yes.
You know, kudos
About
to you for
80,
getting the product out there.
Thank you.
So if you are out and about in New York and in some other cities, and you want a delicious champagne at a great value, look out for La Caravelle. We're big champagne fans on the Grape Nation. Rita, we do a thing called the wine list. We ask our guests 5 questions. Everyone gets the same 5 questions. Don't dwell on them. You don't have to give
Okay.
long answers. We're running out of time, and
Okay.
I want to
Quick.
get this in, and I want to talk. Let's evaluate the Nina for a minute or two in our wine sip. So let's buzz through these. The problem is I'm throwing a ringer in. It's called the wine list, but this is the special Rita Jammet wine and champagne. So there's potentially a wine answer and a champagne. All right, so the first question is, what's Rita drinking now? What is she trying? What's the season pushing on her? What's in her fridge? What's got your attention?
In addition to champagne,
Yes.
that is. In addition to champagne. I happen to love Lopez de Heredia, which is a Spanish wine.
Lopez de Heredia.
Lopez
Okay.
de Heredia, yes.
Okay.
Delicious wine.
So Spanish
There's
wine?
Spanish wine. There's a Chablis that I'm very fond of. It's called Moreau Naudet.
Okay.
It's actually, you recognize the label. It's like the OK
Spell
sign.
for me.
Moreau -Naudet.
Oh, Moreau. Is
Yeah.
that the...
That's the one that
the
does...
hand.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
The hand.
I tell this to everyone. I will post your answers because people love to, kind of follow up on your recommendations. Anything else?
I always love Burgundy. Burgundy
Okay.
Volnay.
Okay.
Dangerville is
Dangerville.
my...
Yeah.
my
Those
go-to.
are good ones. Now, champagne, non-La Caravelle. What do you like?
I love Krug. I love Laurent Perrier Grand Siècle. This beautiful cuvée.
I had lunch with Michelle DeFeo. in
Oh,
New York,
good.
And she introduced a whole bunch of new Grand Six.
They're
and
beautiful,
They
aren't
were
they?
beautiful.
They're
There were
beautiful.
3 or 4 of
Yep.
them. It was
Beautif-
nice to taste
beautiful
them.
champagne.
And I know you're close to the Krug family. All right, Rita. Rita Jammet's favorite wine and food pairing, and then give me a favorite champagne and food pairing.
Food and wine, meaning the type of food to start
Yeah,
with.
what's a great pairing? What
What's
do
a
you
great
like?
pairing? With champagne or not?
Give me wine first and give me champagne.
Okay.
Not what you think is a good idea, what you like.
Oysters and Chablis.
Okay. So that's your wine.
That's my wine.
We have a rule that you can't say oysters in champagne because it's too good and too obvious.
Good.
So for champagne, besides
for
oysters,
champagne, I would say sushi or burger.
Okay. So you had mentioned burger earlier. We're begging people to try a nice champagne with a burger.
Oh yes.
Okay. All right. This is a tough question for you, and I don't want you to be exclusive, meaning leaving anyone out of friends. So do your best. We ask people their favorite wine restaurant and or bar that has great attention to wine, champagne, they're knowledgeable, their selection, the environment. Does anything jump off the charts for you? Now, I've been following you for a while, and you have a pattern. You favor certain places. I mean, you know your stuff, but you're at some places more than others.
I would say Le Bernardin, Jean-Georges, for sure.
Great restaurant,
Flora
great
Bar.
wine.
Flora Bar.
Okay.
Very interesting wine list. Esoteric wines.
Good answer.
Which I love, too.
Give me one more.
Union Square Cafe.
Okay. That's Josh Wagner, I think.
Yes, yeah.
Is it? Jason Wagner,
yeah.
right. He does a good job with one. All right, good answers. All right. Favorite, you got to give me two answers here. And it doesn't have to be just one if it's more than one. But one for champagne, one for wine. Rita's favorite all-time wine and favorite all-time champagne.
Favorite all-time wine is Volnay from Dangerville.
Any particular vintage?
Les Champans. 08.
Okay, but that wine,
15,
that's a favorite anyway.
That's a favorite.
Great answer. And then, besides Le Caravelle, give me a champagne, an all-time favorite.
With vintage you want? Or not
Well,
necessarily?
I think there's two answers. I think favorite all-time champagne, and is there or was there a vintage that you remember?
I would say, in the rosé, I would say Laurent Perrier for their rosé.
They're very well known.
Cuvée
for the
Alexandre. Yes, that's
Okay.
beautiful rosé. And then I really like the Krug style, very
Okay.
much so. Whether it's the Grande Cuvée or it's the Claude Duménil or Claude Ambonnet, they're just...
That's the way you answer that, Rita. All right, last question, and I'm going to make this easy for you. The question is, recommend the best wine around 15, 20 bucks. Now, I'm going to push that question off the table, and I'm going to say to you, recommend the best champagne values, and I'll answer it first. Le Caravelle is a champagne that's accessible, that's wonderful, and it's priced right. I don't want to send people to your competitors, but can you think of other good value champagnes? What's good for 30, 40, 50 bucks?
30,
Can you
40,
think?
50 bucks. Perrier Jouet, probably.
Okay.
Is a good
Solid?
value. Solid.
Okay.
Tétanger, I'm not sure, but I think they're beautiful champagnes.
They may
I'm not sure
have
about
something.
the prices.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can get champagnes in that price range.
You can.
All right, Rita, did a very good job.
Thank you.
And I like the little fear in your face for a moment. That's the whole point of it.
I want to make sure I do a good job
No,
and
you
I
did a great
represent
job.
myself.
All right, we're going to wrap up. Before we wrap up, we do a thing called the Weekly Wine Sip. And it's a chance for us to taste wine on the air every week. And it always makes sense when our guest is involved in it. So let's do the... you want to do the Nina or you want to open that?
We can open. We have the Nina open.
Don't
Now
open that. Keep that. We'll talk about the Nina or whichever one you want.
Yeah, no, let's do this
Okay.
one. I brought it with me.
All right. So we tasted the Cuvée Nina. Give me a couple of quick vitals on that. Retail, a bottle of the Cuvée Nina is about.
It's around 35.
So there's an incredible value
Yes.
for an incredible champagne, and we're drinking that now. Because Cuvée Nina is a Blanc de Blanc, and we did mention it quickly, but tell people again what would be a great food pairing.
Can you open for me? Just one.
I'll do it. Rita's trying to open.
Because I had shoulder surgery.
I'll be the expert one.
So yeah, the
What's
blanc, the Blanc de Blanc, Blanc de Blanc, it can be. You want contrast or you want harmony?
You got both?
I got both. Okay. My favorite is with the Blanc de Blanc. I would say with caviar and on potato chips.
Okay.
That's
Not separately.
together or caviar itself.
Right.
Caviar like with a mother of pearl spoon.
So blanc de blanc, a little tin of caviar,
Uh-huh.
and potato
Little-
chips
not
is your
always, but-
delevery vessel,
Yes,
right? So you
yes.
put the caviar and then
Exactly.
you just,
Or you can have the caviar as is.
Potato chip, the saltiness, the fat.
Yeah.
Okay. And Rita, Rita likes to hang out with the Petrosians, so she's
I do.
she's hooked into caviar. All right, so Rita, we tasted the Nina. We are tasting the Blanc de Blanc,
Blanc de
now,
Blanc,
right?
yeah.
Tell me a little about this.
So the Blanc de Blanc, being that it's aged for 3 years, it gives time to that single grape, the Chardonnay, which is delicate grape. It's the one that has the most acidity. But then with the time that it spends in the bottle, the flavors are kind of evolving with a little brioche and
I was
a little.
just gonna say,
Yeah.
compared to the
Almond.
Nina, you get that classic biscuity,
Exactly,
brioche,
yeah.
baked
Gingerbread,
yeasty.
maybe even
Yeah.
a little bit. And then
Yeah.
at the end, you'll get that
And the
acidity
nose,
that comes in. Yes.
there's a nice strong
white
nose to-
flowers
Yep.
in the nose.
Yep.
I like to say yuzu. 'Cause, it's very
There is,
fragrant.
when you think about that citrus or that sweetness,
Yeah.
it's not like lemon or Meyer. It's
It's got
yuzu or
citrus
something.
with floral a little bit.
All right, tell me. Wait, did we just pair for Blanc de Blanc or Nina? I forgot.
Blanc de Blanc.
Okay, so let's go backwards. On the Nina,
On the Nina, I really like pizza with it a
okay,
lot.
the Nina more than the Blanc de Blanc.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And also the Nina and then the rosé with red meats. You can have the rosé with barbecue or even the Nina with barbecue, with steak, with lamb, burgers.
So our message here is, and we could probably sit. We're going to have to wrap up, but we could probably sit with Rita another hour or two. The message is that champagne is very versatile.
Yes.
We've recommended some foods that people wouldn't think of to pair with it, and that you should think about drinking more champagne.
It goes
Instead
without
of going
saying.
to a restaurant with a white and a red,
Right.
bring a champagne and a red.
Absolutely.
Bring a champagne and a white.
Absolutely.
Can you think of a better way to kick off a meal? Forget the celebratory part.
No.
But the
it's-
pairing and all of
Yeah,
that?
champagne should be a just because drink, not
Okay.
for an occasion. Or
Okay. And look out for La Caravelle. Rita, we're going to wrap up. I'm going to ask you to give me some information, but hold on for a sec. If you have a question, suggestion, wine happening, or event, hit me up at sam@thegrapenation.com. That's sam@thegrapenation.com. Follow us on Facebook at The Grape Nation. Follow us on Instagram at SBenRuby, that's me, and the hashtag The Grape Nation. On Twitter, it's at BenRuby and the hashtag The Grape Nation. Also, subscribe to our podcasts, The Grape Nation Podcast. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. As I said earlier, and I think you'd like to dig into this, we'll post Rita's wine list, and I will list Rita's champagnes and some of the pairings on our social media. You'll see it on Facebook. You'll see it on Instagram. Rita, if we want to follow you and the La Caravelle brand on social.
On social.
We talked, you can go to the website,
Sure.
La Caravelle.
Sure,
but
sure.
where can we find you?
So Instagram, Rita Jammet.
Okay, at Rita Jammet?
At Rita Jammet. RITAJAMMET.
Right.
And then at La Caravelle Champagne.
Okay. And you
Instagram.
have a terrific hashtag because you eat a lot of champagne and you drink a lot of champagne.
Other than Lucky
And you-
Rita.
Yes. you could look at Lucky Rita too.
Then it goes to Lucky La Caravelle Champagne too.
Right. And wait, what's the handle Caravelle Champ?
Caravelle Champ is Twitter.
Twitter.
Yeah.
And
The-
that's one of your older ones.
I love it because
Yeah.
my son came up with that and I love the double meaning.
All right, so before we wrap up, let's talk 30 minutes about your son. You have more than one son, but I want to talk about one particular one. And I wanted to talk anyway, but there was a wonderful story on CBS
Yeah.
this morning. Is it Nicholas?
Nicholas.
Nicholas is one of the principals.
He's one of the
at
co-founders of Sweet Green.
Sweet Green. And Sweet Green, the concept, just quickly.
Sweet Green is a fast casual that was founded 11 years ago by 3 students from Georgetown who were tired of not having healthy and good dining options. So they came up with this. It now has 94
It's
locations.
ubiquitous in New York.
It's- yeah.
I was just going into Hudson Yards, and there it
Yes.
was.
Oh, yes.
You know, right there. And the story that I saw this morning, and it's more than admirable is they've devised for their employees that you get 5 months leave.
Yep.
Enough where it's so uncommon that
Yes.
it's a news story.
Yes.
You build loyalty and people
Yes.
through offering things like that. So Rita, besides making good champagne, has some pretty good offspring too. All right, Rita, I want to thank you for being our guest today. Thank you to Rita Jammet.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it was a pleasure, and
My pleasure.
I will have to have you back because we have to cover a lot of other things.
Just say when.
Rita is the owner of La Caravelle Champagne. She is the chief bubble officer. So thank you for coming in and spending time with us. Thank you to our engineer, Matt, on the board today, and thank you to everyone at the Heritage Radio Network. I'm Sam Ben Ruby, and you've been listening to The Grape Nation.
Thank you, Sam, and to all the listeners.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
everyone. Bubbly cheers.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content and to hear about exclusive events, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at heritage_radio. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be a part of the food world's most innovative community? Rate the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join our community by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. Thanks for listening.